Oh, the weather's so nice. Welcome back to Drinks Coach at Vinesack, Drinks Coach UK, all lowercase. If you'd like to ask us any questions, suggest future shows. We're now in a nice, gentle canter, hopefully for the foreseeable future, doing 2 shows a week. They'll usually go out on a Tuesday and a Thursday, but there may be reasons why I might do a Friday special or something. And I'll be doing some other stuff on the side, I imagine. But as far as Drinks Coach is concerned, we're going to continue the format. Thank you for all of the really, really nice things that people have said about it. And we'll continue to just do what pops into my head. And please continue to communicate with us, and please continue to maybe donate to the Drinks Trust post-lockdown. But now lockdown's virtually over, we have other projects, and it would be impossible to do 5 shows a week. Anyway, today I'm talking about one of the biggest wines of France. Very popular this time of year. Côtes du Rhône. Côtes du Rhône, I think everyone's had a glass of Côtes du Rhône at one point or another. And you'll see a lovely bottle here flanked by these wonderful flankers. This label is quite familiar to some people. Cellier de Dauphins, a very large producer of Rhône. But as you'll see, exceptionally good producer too. And it's a wine that my wife likes. She tends to buy wine by label. I think the labels are really lovely in French. Yeah, the wines inside always punch slightly above where you think they're going to be, and in some cases much higher. So we're going to talk about those in a minute, and I'm going to use those as examples of classic Côtes du Rhône, and the one in the middle is kind of the other half of the story. So let's start off with this one. This is Cellier de Dauphins, 2018. It's just a classic bottle of Rhône Red. And you find that some of these Rhône wines do have these strange bottle shapes, which is congruous to the bottles I had back in the day. That used to be a bottle that you'd probably find Côtes du Rhône Caran in, for example, which has now been elevated to sort of superstar status, but is a part of Côtes du Rhône of itself. This wine is largely made from a grape variety called Grenache, which is widely planted all über de Platz. Garnacha, as it's called in Spain. You find it sometimes in Rioja. You find it called Canonau in Sardinia. Of course, Grenache itself, it's the kind of key, it's the engine of one of the most famous wines in the Rhône and indeed of the world, called Châteauneuf du Pape. That's always made from quite a lot of Grenache, if not entirely so. Now, Mrs. loves this. It's always got a familiar smell and a good one. When these wines are very fresh, when we move on to 2019, whenever that may happen, this is 2018, you find the wines very, very fragrant. Grenache, when it's young, smells a little bit stony in a nice way, like that wet smell of just after the rain in summer. There's a word for that, petrichor. Smell of kind of like slates warming in the sun. But also there's this smell of roses or something, and a very, very fruity, cherryish smell, a raspberry smell. Almost all Rhône wines, particularly Grenache and Syrah-based ones, then go through this almost chrysalis metamorphosis and go from fruity and light on the palate, although they can be quite robust. They can always, some of them have got 15 plus alcohol, but then they just turn rich and serious all of a sudden. And this happens with Australian Shiraz as well. If you drank Grange when it was first, pressed after vintage, this is the $400 bottle of wine from the Southern Hemisphere, the most famous Australian Shiraz. When you taste that wine out of that, it's very floral and fragrant and almost accessible. And then a couple of years later, it builds these shoulders and it becomes an incredibly powerful wine that can take decades and decades to come round. And that's true of the biggest Rhônes as well. So I'm just going to give it a little taste. Look, it's perfectly good. It's the kind of wine I'd like to have in a basket if I'm going for a picnic. It's got a nice rorty, what we call dry pumice tannin. That's a very wanky wine phrase that we use. Dry pumice tannin, what does that mean? Well, you know pumice stones that used to scratch things off your hands with, you used to use it to help washing. Pumice is sort of a porous rock, and it tastes very dry in the mouth. Not unpleasantly, a bit like, when if you put paper against your tongue, it's very drying. But it's a sensation of dryness. It's a chalky dryness in the mouth, but it has this wonderful fruit. And you have those classic tannins in this wine. I actually can't remember a Cellier de Dauphin, considering they make millions of bottles of these wines. I can't remember one which was as convincingly classic and delicious as this. But this is my wife's drink. This is what I'm going to drink. This is a new wine that they've released. I believe it doesn't have any listings yet. I mean, this you can buy in Asda, £8, probably Tesco, Sainsbury's, whatever. It's £8 a bottle. For an extra £2, $9.99 is the projected retail price. They've brought out a reserve. This has got a healthy chunk of Syrah in it as well. So it's Grenache and Syrah mixed together, which is the classic Rhone blend of great wines. This wine was entered in the Decanter World Wine Awards this year. Got a platinum prize and scored 97 points out of 100. And I thought, oh yeah, likely. Tenner, really. And I tasted this. It's the second bottle I opened. Unbelievable quality of fruit. It has this profound bramble nose. There's a kiss, there's a hint of a little cuddle, a little framework of oak. I think there's been some oak finish here, where I don't imagine there's any wood in the first one. Long, fragrant, sophisticated, £10. Yes, please. Almost the reason why I'm doing this entire bit today is because I was so blown away by how good this wine is. Thank you, Jo Thompson, for bringing it to me. And she brought me a nice champagne to try, which will be in another show later as well, because I loved it. But yes, Cellier Dauphins are making world-class wine for a tenner. This is the equivalent to, I don't know, if you find a really, really good value wine from Chile or Argentina, it's that wine that, I don't know, because of the company that are making it, I think it's going to be consistent year in, year out. And this is the first one I believe they've made. It's a little darker in colour. The Syrah gives it a blackcurranty mulberry, as I said, some chocolatiness to it. Flipping delicious. Absolutely lovely. Okay, so moving on. We're going to go on to this wine. It's called Lunar Apogée, which I'm sure you will realise has something to do with the stars and the moons. Lunar Apogée means the apogee of the moon, simply. The reason why it's called apogee of the moon, and you'll also see on the label, it says here Demeter. Demeter is the association in France that makes sure that people are adhering to the rules of ultra organics. There's a chap called Rudolf Steiner who back in the day, it was the 40s, built a village just outside East Grinstead where people lived by his rules of letting nature grow, bringing vitality back to the soil. And after the 60s and 70s in France, even vineyards like Romanée Conti, by the way, Romanée Conti is the world's most famous wine, the world's most expensive wine. It's sold from Burgundy. It's a 3 and a bit acre vineyard. The wine costs over £10,000 a bottle. After the Second World War, when all these chemical companies didn't have to make explosives anymore, they came to farmers, particularly in France, and said, do you want some free fertilizer? You can, if you don't like it, fine, but if you like it, then we pay us from next year. And they were giving this stuff away, and people used so much fertilizer and pesticide in the ground that it killed all the animals, and the ground became solid rock, for want of a better description. It was concrete. And by way of Rudolf Steiner's biodynamism techniques, this is right, it's called biodynamism, which is kind of like a witchcraft organics. Using this process, flowers started to grow again, the roots got longer and deeper in the vine, loosening up the soil, which meant worms and insects came back, and it breathed life back into what was a dead beast. And for that reason, those are very expensive processes, you can imagine. Those people who use biodynamism in their vineyards tend to be people who either are in a region where it is so healthy and clean and there's no rot. Maybe you've got wind at night, Mistral. It's bone dry, there's no moisture, humidity, Southern Rhone. It's less risky to do biodynamics there because you're not going to have rain and mildew and stuff where basically, frankly, there's no plan B. You're not allowed to then use herbicide if just in case. The French call that lutte raisonnée, which is kind of like we're organic, but unless we don't have to be organic. We're organic until the mildew comes, and then we're not organic that year, but then we go back to organic. No, these people are committed, and they have to do the same thing for 5 years in a row, filling cow horns with horse shit and burying it in the ground and creating these super energized, full of life microbial actions, which they then put in the vines and flowers or whatever else they're going to be growing in their biodynamic garden, and it creates this incredible energy in the drink. And the jury's out about how much effect it has. But if you're someone like Chateau Latour, one of the world's most expensive wines in Bordeaux, and you've tried everything else, and you're already charging £1,000 a bottle for your wine. You can afford to do that. Give it a go. If it improves things by 0.5%, sorry, 0.5%, or 1% or something, you're 1% better than your neighbours, and that's what tends to have happened. Some of the finest wines on earth, which are telephone numbers, have adopted biodynamism just to try and get one little inch ahead of the competition, and in many cases produce some extraordinary wine. Well, what does it do? I mean, realistically, if you're growing vineyards like this, what happens? Well, you end up with, I'm just checking the time, well, I'm making these a bit longer now because we're only doing 2 a week, so don't worry, it's not about to run out of time. What happens? Well, you've got a vine which is very, very healthy. It's surrounded by weeds. It doesn't look particularly pretty because it's not manicured and it's not been trimmed. It's not been had systemic herbicides put in it, so there's no. So you're going to have weeds and stuff. In fact, they embrace the fact the weeds are there. The weeds fix nitrogen and potassium in the soil. They're a cover crop. Phosphorus and things like that, which get washed away over time in agricultural land, are held there by the legumes and the weeds and stuff that are grown between the vines. We call this cover cropping, and it's something that's coming back. Something that we lost in the process of technologically advancing what we do in vineyards. So you've got this kind of fairly wacky, hippie-ish, Wurzel Gummidge looking vineyard producing the most beautifully healthy grapes. Then what happens is the grapes come into the vineyard, into the winery, and they press the grapes and they go through the name process. Biodynamism insists on certain things which organics don't, because you don't make organic wine, you only grow organic grapes. What you do with them afterwards is entirely up to you. So if you're going to have biodynamic grapes, you then have to treat them naturally. The yeasts, you can't inoculate with the yeast. You can't take a yeast from Chile or from Champagne, which does a particular thing very well, and put it in your wine in Bordeaux. If you want to be biodynamic, you just open the vats and let the birds shit in it. And then natural, cultured yeasts around your environment, which have been healthily contributed to by your Rudolf Steiner techniques, will automatically, spontaneously start the wine fermenting. And instead of having one ferment, where you have one yeast turning sugar into a specific alcohol, or turning certain sugars into certain aldehydes, whatever, you have thousands of different yeasts, which creates layers in the wine. Some are good, some are bad. You might have a little bit of vinegar, but that's fine. It just spices the wine up a bit. You might have some unusual esters, so it might be a bit funky sometimes. And if it goes wrong, it can be pretty nasty. It smells like a horse's arse some of the time. But if you're good at it and you have a great wild yeast culture, you end up with a wine which has this amazing texture. It builds fluffiness and richness into the wine. And it has a unique set of smells which does smell more live, more like a real ale or a real cider. It feels like it's still living and breathing somehow. So let's have a look. Much more purple in colour. This has been made with 4 grape varieties. So you've got your Grenache and Shiraz, but you've also got 2 of my little cheeky favourites. Mourvedre, very deep purple in colour, very dark, almost tobacco-y, chocolatey, fudgy as a grape variety, the smells and the aromas. But it's also got some Cinsault, very fashionable now. Cinsault was seen as a working variety, not capable of great things, but we've discovered that's probably not the case, especially when you've got old Cinsault. It produces a wonderful, fragrant, perfumed raspberryish wine. So those extra components are in this wine. So you've got 4 chefs working in here rather than the 2 in the last one. The nose! Oh, smell that. Oh, it's delicious. It smells stony, but it smells like there's minerals in the wine. Oh, that texture. It's like warm rain falling into your mouth. It's like it just strokes your throat. Fabulous wine. That, although that's a tenner, that's a bargain. This is also a bargain. It's $13.95, which is a lot for a Côtes du Rhône, you might think. But for a biodynamic wine, that's nothing. Davies Wine Merchants in London and online are selling this for $13.95, and it's absolutely flipping delicious. The last one I drank was one of the great Southern Rhone vintages of all time, 2016. I'd love to know what they're looking like now. But that wine tastes like Chateauneuf de Pape with bells on, and it costs very little compared to that. So, just to complete the Côtes du Rhône story, there's I think what the French call minuscule amount of Côtes du Rhône white made. It's not that minuscule because they're making 400 million hectolitres. Is that right? Yes, it is. No, 4 million hectolitres. 4 million hectolitres. 400 million litres of wine are made in this region. And even if it's 2 or 3%, there's still several million cases of white made every year in the region of the Rhone. And I think it's one of its secret weapons. Again, this did very well in the awards last year. This is 2018. Cellier Dauphin White. This is available in Tesco, and it's £8. I think it's also, it might be available in Waitrose as well. I can't remember. But anyway, just have a look around. It's widely available. So let's have a crack at this. Now, I think that white Rhone and other white wines from that area of the south of France are maybe the most underrated everyday drinks. They're brilliant as an aperitif because they're fragrant and pretty. There's no oak to get in the way. They're not heavy. This wine spent time on lees. That means the wine has been in the tank. I can smell the presence of the fact that the dead yeast cells, when they land in the tank, come back up and give this wine a richness, a spiciness, a lovely, spicy texture. Almost a funky spice on the nose, like fenugreek or something. Something that would go brilliantly with a fenugreek fish curry or something. Wonderfully limpid and soft and easy about itself. Again, 2018. This is a whole year old. This is £8. If you buy Taste the Difference Sainsbury's Côtes du Rhône, also very good by the way, it's about the same money, but you're getting a branded wine for £8. Well, I don't know, maybe they make it for them, I don't know. But this wine is absolutely delicious in my view. Goes with anything. Chicken, like a roast chicken type affair. It would be lovely with a salad. It's lovely with a bit of cheese. Great with oily fish, like maybe mullet or snapper or something on the barbecue. But for £8, I really don't know what you're going to spend your money on if it's not that. Well, 16 minutes in. It's been the longest one I've done so far, but I felt it was important both to talk about biodynamism, which is something that's really kind of in vogue right now with all the ecological problems we're facing, but also to show you a thoroughly fantastic brand from France that is delivering year in, year out. If you see that label, give it a shout.